Hello, and welcome to season 4 of the State of Healthcare podcast. I can't believe it's actually season 4. I feel like we've just gotten started, and to be honest, we are just barely scratching the surface of so many issues in healthcare, or just even things that I feel like people should know about. This season, we are talking about autoimmune disorders, the not so hidden epidemic. For so long, these have been labeled a diagnosis of as exclusion, right? So many people were seen as crazy, or they just, were whining about these things that people were like, oh, just push through it. But I feel like now we are starting to realize that so many more people have this, whether we're better at diagnosing or more people are having these particular disorders occurring. It could be a combo. That's what we're going to discuss and try to look into this season. So if you've ever felt like you have this cluster of symptoms, or you don't know what's going on, or you feel like your body is even fighting itself, feel free to tune in. This is kind of a learning process. It's learning how to modulate your flares, learning what that is, where can you get help. So come with me on this journey. Autoimmune disorders, the not so hidden epidemic. Hello, and welcome back. Again, we are continuing our season 4 on autoimmune disorders, right? The not so silent epidemic. And I am here with Chardae, and we are going to actually let you tell your story of your autoimmune journey.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm Chardae. 33 years old, and I was diagnosed with a mixed connective tissue disorder in 2011.
Okay.
It's mixed connective tissue because they can't really figure out, like, it doesn't have characteristics like to specifically classify it as one thing. It's kind of got characteristics of a couple different things. And in my particular case, my body attacks my lungs. So my lungs are working at about 65% capacity.
Okay.
Probably most common symptoms are like fatigue and like a chronic cough, and intermittent joint pain that kind of comes in and out. And then again, it's hard to tell, is it autoimmune or is it training? But definitely the cough and the fatigue are kind of my biggest challenges.
How did this start for you? Did you just start to notice things, or like how did you end up getting, and is that the label for you? Is that the like mixed connected tissue? Okay.
Yeah, for me, so it really started with a color change in my fingers. So
Okay.
for those of you that are familiar with like Raynaud's phenomenon, actually, I probably even have some going on right now from my cold drink. But so I was in college, in my freshman year of college, and it was wintertime, and I would like walk across campus to one of my good friends' dorms, and I'd get them like, oh, my fingers are so cold, can't feel my fingers. And I would look at them and they were just completely white from like the MCPs all the way to the tips. And I was like, that doesn't look normal.
Right.
And then I'd go and I'd run them under warm water, just doing anything I could to warm them up. And then there'd be this big flush of like blood come back and they'd return to normal color and kind of went about my merry way.
Right.
But that happened for quite a while. And then finally in like January, so this must have been like 2011. So that was happening in 2010. January of 2011, I actually like went to a doctor and kind of got some things looked at, and that's when did some blood work and things, and that's kind of when the diagnosis.
Was that your primary doctor, or did they have to send you to? Because I know it's and the reason I ask is a lot of people that go through the whole autoimmune, it's like a long process, right? You like this, and it's a diagnosis of rule out. And did they rule out? And then the other two part is, did they rule out Raynaud's for you? Oh, words.
I don't even remember. I think it was a rheumatologist in the end, but I don't remember how I got to the rheumatologist. Now they actually ask. And no, Raynaud's was not ruled out because it is a very common symptom of people with autoimmune disorders.
Right.
So yeah, that was kind of what they diagnosed with, and like, because you've got this other thing.
And I think I have bugged you before, but do you mind, if you can't tell from the way she talks, she does work in healthcare. So we'll get into a little bit of that, because if you hear a reference in anatomical terms, what exactly can you define Raynaud's for people? Since I can't even pronounce it apparently right now, but yeah.
So Raynaud's, a lot of times it's used like Raynaud's phenomenon. And so basically it's your body is trying to preserve blood flow to your main organs. So then it doesn't send as much blood to your appendages. So typically fingers and toes don't get as much blood flow. So then they actually get that kind of like blue tinge. They get deprived of oxygen essentially. And so prolonged exposure and prolonged time like that can start to have issues. People can develop like ulcers on the tips of their fingers and those kind of things. So whenever I go to the rheumatologist, they're always checking, making sure I don't have like ulcers on the bottom of my fingers or on the tips of my fingers, I guess, not the bottom, but
Right. The end, I guess.
yeah, exactly.
No, and then you do certain precautions, right, for that for yourself, just to help with it.
Biggest things to help manage that is just trying to keep my core warm. Because then if my core is kind of warm, then my body will be more okay sending, you know, blood and kind of resources to my appendages.
Right.
I've tried gloves in the past. For me, they didn't really work because it just never really seemed to keep my fingers warm enough. And then I lost functionality, right? It's really hard to use your phone when you've got gloves on or to hold a steering wheel, and even the phones with the grips and all those special things. I just personally didn't have a lot of success. I do love me a pair of dry hands, or not dry hands, those hand warmers.
Yeah. We both do pulse. Side note, so dry hands is automatically, we're like, that's our go-to. We'll worry about the other stuff later.
Hot hands is great. And then I have like a topical cream that was prescribed by my doctor that you kind of put a little bit more proximal, and it's supposed to, it's a vasodilator. And so I have that to use. I'm not the best at using it because it's greasy. And as an occupational therapist, typing on my computer, touching patients, like I don't want to be greasy. So
well, it also makes sense. Like if this is the problem, right? If your core is like, then if you keep that warmer, but I like that again, you like plan for that. And there's you have all the things in the toolbox. And again, I also feel like vascular issues also do seem to tie in a lot with autoimmune. I do see that in a lot of my patients, there's usually some type of vascular change, and that's something that you have to modulate. But speaking of pull, so I know I've asked you a little bit before on your pull journey, but so a lot of times people that are like, I have an autoimmune disorder, I can't do this, or I can't exercise, or I can't this stuff. First off, explain to me how you started in the pole. And then like how exercise and activity, like how does that tie in for your autoimmune?
Yeah, so I started pole back in 2019, I believe. And I really just wanted because I was already working as an occupational therapist, and I had a patient that was afraid to even transition from laying supine to sitting upright with me. He was just showing a lot of anxiety. So I finally asked him, I was like, you feel really uncomfortable. Can you kind of explain a little bit? Like, and he was like, oh, I'm just not so sure about. And then I was like, are you concerned with my size? And he was like, yeah. Like, I just don't trust that you could support me, like, if I needed help. And so that really bothered me. So then from that, I was like, I want, I need to strengthen my upper body, both because I'm tired of being a skinny girl. I want to be fit, but also it's very important for my line of work. Like I'm transferring people, I'm doing a lot of manual work. And so I want my body to be as strong as I can. And I drove past a pole studio when I was living in Albuquerque, and I was like, sounds interesting. Texted my best friend, asked if she was interested in going. She has like a dance. She grew up doing dance. So she's like, sure, why not? And so we went, and it was so much fun. It was just the two of us in the class. My first instructor was probably in like her early to mid 40s. So I also found that was really inspiring. Just like, she's doing pole, like why can't I do pole? You know? And finished class, and then the pain started to set in. Basically everything, I was sore from like my shoulders down within 2 hours. Like, what the heck did I just do? But I fell in love with it, and I've kind of been just
doing that ever since.
We've been enrolling ever since.
So for a lot of people, again, it's like I have people all over the spectrum of things, right? Where little activity, this, that. But how do you modulate? I know you also do a lot of yoga, or like, so explain like how exercise plays a role for you with autoimmune.
For me, the yoga's really come into play more recently and more seriously, probably over the past year. I've dabbled on and on since I was 11. But there's a big focus on the pranayama, the breath work of yoga. And so in my head, I'm like, if I have a disease that's attacking my lungs, I want to do anything and everything. That's not necessarily jumping to a medication. I do think medication has its place, and I do take some medication, but I want to do the things that I have control over to try to help that. So that's really why the yoga piece came in. Trying to focus on, what are the exercises that help, contract and expand my lung capacity and just working on my output and controlling my breath to give myself the best chance of having good lung health. The pole has been really great. Just overall fitness. And honestly, I think more than anything, what pole has given me has been stronger mental health. When I first started, I was coming out of, like, I was in a long distance relationship that later ended in a breakup, which totally took me by surprise. My mother had just passed away. So there was all these empty pieces of me. And pole just helped bring back some confidence, and it helped me remember that I can be sexy, but be sexy for me. And it helped me be stronger physically, but then also mentally, because some of these moves are scary. Right. And there is a certain amount of trust you have to have with yourself to even attempt some of these things. And then there's also the persistence. I wasn't good the first day. Heck, I'm like 6 years in, and sometimes I'm like, am I good? But that persistence and willingness to show up for myself, and then the support that comes from being at the pole studio has just been more than I could have ever imagined. And so I think that that's been a very big help, just what the mental strength and emotional strength that it's given me.
No, and I think that's important. Again, that's a little bit why I love pole. And when I started the journey for myself to also, like, regain feeling like sexy about myself, but also for me. I like that you said it's for you, but I also think that it's good that you found like a community. And so you're more likely to go because you enjoy it and you look forward to seeing your friends. So how do you feel like, because I know there's days, like there's flares, there's things, there's the cycles with autoimmune. How do you modulate your activities? Because again, pole is an intense exercise. And you are good at it. I see your videos, but
Thank you. I have had to be more aware, I'd say probably this past year. With just what my limits are and being more okay with taking recovery time. Like, yes, it sucks not to be in class and to see people post the cool moves or the cool routines, and I'm like, I should have worked out. But listening to my body, and some days the fatigue is so real that I'm like, I'm gonna drive to Poland. I won't even have enough gas in the tank to do any moves. And I don't want to bring down the ambiance in the room, because I'm like really keeping my eyes open, and then also reminding myself that it is okay to take breaks, and the best way to take care of my body is to also give it the rest that it needs. And particularly with having a more physical job as well, I have found that like some days where I'm doing a bunch of like maximum assist transfers and things, that really does leave less energy for me at the end of the day to go to pole, which it can be hard because that also, like I said, really feeds my mental health. And it's kind of my nice escape. So that's been a little bit of a balance.
And that can be frustrating too when it's like you have to work, right?
But
then you're like, now work is taking away from your joy.
Can't pay for pole without working, but sometimes I can't go to pole because of work. And,
that balance.
But lots more stretching. Me and my heating pad are like this. Started PT. So I like layers of things. I think there's a lot of things that I can control to kind of help make sure that I can continue to participate. But really, more than anything, I'd say listening to my body when I'm tired. And knowing that it's okay. It's okay if I don't go to class today, and I'm not going because I just don't feel like it. I'm not going because I'm mad. I'm going because my body genuinely needs rest.
Well, and I think that's a really important lesson. That is like a balance for everybody, but also again, respecting that's what is going on with your body, right? Because again, sometimes it's so hard. You feel a little good and you want to do all the things, and then you do so many things, and now you can't do any things for a while. So if you are better about finding the layers and respecting when you're like, oh, I'm feeling a little tired today, this may not be my best moment to go because maybe I overexhaust myself. And now I have to miss a whole week of pole. And then it's like, no. So I know I've told you this in the past, but I feel like, and again, maybe you're like, I'm hiding the struggle of all the things that I've done, but you feel very pulled together. Like you've learned how to modulate, you've learned how to find and respect. And I know this probably sounds like a changing journey, right? Over the past year, it sounds like you've had to do a little bit more of that. So I guess talk me through like how you figured that out, or.
I think one of the other big kind of switches for me too is if I'm gonna talk to my patients about, you need to be doing your exercise, or you need to eat well, or all the things that as a professional I'm telling them they have to do to take care of their bodies.
I'm
like, if I'm gonna tell these things to my patients. I'm not going to be a hypocrite.
Right.
Right. And so I think that also has been some motivation for me. Like, I do want to practice what I preach. And that starts with self-care and giving your body the rest of it needs. You know, talking about energy conservation with my MS patients, for example. And I'm like, hey, take the rest before you're exhausted. Don't push until you get to that point, because then you're down and out. So also in doing my line of work, that has helped remind me of like, hey, give yourself that same grace, or abide by those same principles. I don't remember the other part of your question. I'm so sorry.
No, you're totally fine. And then I guess also it feels like it's also a changing journey, right? So like, well, it's like how you start on that, but like, have you had to reassess and be like, okay, now I need this? Or how did you get to being able to figure out? Because again, I don't know, does being in healthcare help you with that? Like,
excuse me. In some ways, in other ways, I'm like, I know too much. But no, I think the assessing is, I've been more okay with, okay, I know that I want to have some kind of movement at least 3 times a week.
right.
And kind of setting that goal.
Okay.
And then the movement can look different. So maybe I'm at pole twice a week, but then I go to a yoga class.
Right.
Or maybe we went out and we went paddleboarding. Or so keeping the movement there, but being okay with it being a little bit more fluid as to what it actually is.
Okay.
I would love to say that I'm better at having like a home practice, both for yoga and for pole. But there's something about the community that really does motivate me. At home, I'm like, oh, the last thing I did was trying this. So yeah, just really, I set standards, if you will, but they're loose. Whereas I think before I was very much like, no, and pole, and I'm there 4 days a week, and like that was almost my whole personality. And now pole is still very much a large part of my personality, but now we've also got like yogi Chardae, like occupational therapist Chardae, just kind of juggling and shifting things so that they all can fit in, because they all bring me joy in different ways.
Well, and sometimes it's also hard with a mindset, right? Like I struggle a little bit with having a perfection mindset, which again, then I'm also, which is ironic because with patients, we're like, it's okay, you made some progress, right? And then for me, I'm like, we will be amazing, right? And so I think sometimes it is nice to like respect that you shift, and it's okay, right? It's okay. And that's the hardest part, is to be like, no, it's not okay. I want to do this. And even from an injury or from a change with autoimmune, right? To be like, here's who I am now, but it's okay. So from the healthcare side of it, I know we talked a little bit about medications or things like that. We talked about that in the past of like, so yeah, sometimes we know too much, right? Therapists can either be the best or the worst patients. But do you feel like, I know we talked about like that you are able to at least question, right? If like people have presented medication options and you do some research. So talk me through some of that. Like how has that helped you with being able to navigate the healthcare system for yourself?
I'm very stubborn when it comes to starting medications. And I'm not really stubborn in most things, believe it or not. My boyfriend may disagree with you, but he's not here. So, but yeah, very stubborn when it comes to starting medications. So I always ask what my options are. What if can I do a diet change? Can I do X, Y, and Z? So I front load all of them. What are the other things I can do? And then whenever like it really is just the medication, I will do a little bit of my own research as to like what are the medication. I always ask what the expected side effects are. I'll also ask like, can I have lower doses? Is there a way to be on this medication? Sure. But have it the lowest possible dose. I'll also ask things like kind of, is this a forever type thing? Or is it, sometimes we have the like the steroids that they'll give, and those are oftentimes like short little spurts. Like, so is it something like that, or is this something that I need to anticipate being on for the rest of my life? I know when I first started medications, I'm like, I'm in my 20s, right? Like, I don't want to be taking a medication for the rest of my life. That's crazy. And I shouldn't say most, but there's a lot of 20-year-olds that aren't thinking about that, right? And then, but I do think having a background in healthcare helps me feel more confident and more empowered to not just take information and take it as that's the only answer. I'm a lot more comfortable asking for those alternatives. I'm a lot more comfortable saying like, hey, this doesn't feel right, or like, I take notes before I go into appointments and I highlight all those things. And I am not afraid to kind of sprinkle in that I am an occupational therapist.
Okay.
Because I like to, I'd
Uh-huh.
like to back, not that I'm challenging them necessarily,
Right.
but I like to let them know that I also am educated in this and like I'm not
Mhm.
just going to take what you say as the one and
Mhm.
only. But it does make me think about some of my patients who are very health illiterate.
Right.
Because it is a confusing, the medical system is confusing,
Mhm.
and I've been confused
Right.
myself and trying to figure some of that out. So I can't imagine for people who are navigating it, who don't have a good health literacy, or people who are doing English is not their first language, and all those other kind of factors that play in it. It must be really, really hard.
Well, and that's why, again, part of the reason starting the podcast too was trying to teach people to fight for their healthcare.
Mhm.
But you don't have to go in combative to your appointments, but I think educated. I think a lot of times the hard part is you go in and the doctors, again, they're on a time schedule
Mhm.
and they're in, they're out. They're like, here's this, I give you this medicine, here's this. And so if
Yep.
you don't come in prepared, you can get easily steamrolled.
Uh-huh.
And then suddenly you end up on like a gazillion drugs that maybe they haven't checked that you're like, no, I have this other medicine I'm on that interacts with blah, 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 blah. So, just out of curiosity, not anti-medicine, but like, why are you more cautious with that? Again, I know why I personally am I'm like, no, I'll figure it out on my own if I
Yeah.
have to, but like, just your opinion.
I think just when I mean, my father passed away when I was 18, and he had a slew of kind of health conditions and things. And so seeing, I think by the time he passed away, he was taking like 25 pills a day.
Oh, wow.
And I hated that.
Right.
I hated that for him. I hated that for us. And so,
Mhm.
and I felt like there was a problem that would present itself, and then the doctors would immediately, okay, well, we'll give you medication for that. And then there would be a side effect from that medication. So then, and it was just this like piling on of medications.
Right.
And I'm like, at the end of the day, A, medications are expensive.
Yeah, that's true.
And B, if there's
Mhm.
constantly causing other problems, like, are we actually getting to the root of the issue, or are we just perpetually band-aiding this?
Mhm.
And again, don't get me wrong, I do think medications are great. I think they have their place.
Right.
And I do think it gives quality of life for a lot of people.
Mhm.
Excuse me. But for sometimes I can't even take cough medicine and be okay. Like I will be loopy as all get out.
Right.
And so I have a low tolerance for that kind of stuff anyways. But I also I don't want to constantly be creating other problems because I'm just running off of all these medications. So,
Well, no, and that's what you talked about, just how it's like sometimes we don't think about, okay, if this medicine is doing this, maybe we lower our doses instead of give another medication for the side effect. And it does snowball very quickly for a lot of patients. And so I think that is part of it. And then suddenly your actual health problem is that you're on too many medications.
yeah.
And so that's the hardest part, I think, is that it just can become a snowball effect. And sometimes we don't always get to know the root cause, but sometimes again, modulating, like how you talked about, can I fix something with my diet? Can I do exercise? Can I just wear a jacket to keep my core warm? Like, what can I do? Can I not exhaust myself? So I like that there's other alternates, right? Even for me, can I pay better attention to my body so I don't need whatever? So it doesn't mean, again, I do think that there are some things that medication is needed for, right? But I just, again, sometimes they're also very over medicated because we don't take the time to do the things. And sometimes for some people, they're not going to make the life changes. So this
It's
is
easier
for
to
you.
just take a medication.
Yeah, and so that's fine too. I think you have a family history, right, with autoimmune? Okay.
Yeah, so there's 4 girls in my family, and 3 of us have been diagnosed with autoimmune disorders.
Okay.
They're all a little bit different.
Okay.
But that also kind of feeds into my desire to stay active, my desire to do as much as I can.
Okay.
Because clearly there's a link somewhere,
Uh-huh.
right? And I can't control everything. I can't control having gotten an autoimmune disorder.
Right.
But I can control things like my diet and my exercise and how many medications I am on and those kind of things. So as much as I can control the stuff that I know might, even if it's a small impact,
Right.
I want to do those things to give myself the best chance at just longevity and like health and not just this existence, right? I'm big on quality of life, not just
Existing and just being
exactly. And so, but those are things that I can actively control when there is this heavy piece that I just can't.
Right. Is that with your sisters are the same? I know that they have the broad spectrum, right? From all kinds of
Mhm.
okay. So and it is interesting because again, each person, like I always talk about patients aren't cookie cutters, right? So you can come in with the same diagnosis as somebody else, and you guys are going to present very differently. So similar type things, even in the same family. It's not like you all got this, right?
Yeah.
It's just it presented very differently on each person.
Mhm.
Do they also handle things similarly, or you guys have different approaches?
I think as a family, none of us are super, like
Uh-huh.
medication does not tend to be our first best stop.
Uh-huh.
All of us do take medications,
Right.
but I do think we all were like, what are other options? And so
Mhm.
it's as a family, and again, I think that maybe plays into seeing how many medications my dad was on.
Okay.
As a family,
Uh-huh.
we tried to see what our options are
Okay.
before going to the meds, but we all do take medication because
Uh-huh.
I respect Western medicine. I think it's
Uh-huh.
got its, I think it's amazing. And I
Uh-huh.
think it definitely does do a lot for people and quality of life.
Right.
But I don't think that it's the entirety of the puzzle.
Right. Um, and again, I feel like you've given a lot of good nuggets. And as we're chatting about these things, right, it is admitting there are other struggles and this and that. But you do I do respect like that. I respect your approach and I appreciate you talking about that. Advice for someone who maybe just is starting to have symptoms or just got newly diagnosed or kind of diagnosed. The diagnosis pathway is this whole long of their story. But do you have any advice for anybody or just even thoughts on your journey?
I mean, as we kind of highlighted, even within families, things can be very different. So
Hmm.
even with diagnosis, things can be different. I
Hmm.
think finding a community of people that do maybe have the same diagnosis,
Hmm.
just to talk with, to
Hmm.
bounce ideas off each other. Like, oh, have you tried this product? I have a pole friend, and he also has Raynaud's, and so like,
Okay.
it's nice in class when I'm
Uh-huh.
like, oh, I gotta just take a break because I can't feel the pole, and he's like, oh my gosh, me too, my toes, and so even just having that little bit of like common ground has been really
Mhm.
helpful. So
Right.
whether it's there's a ton of like online support groups. I know some of the
Mhm.
medical centers have like in-person ones, but find I mean, even with my sisters, sometimes we'll talk about our struggles. So
Okay.
just trying to find someone who also has an autoimmune disorder that you can
Mhm.
kind of talk about, because really, um, if you're not living it, people can't fully understand.
Right.
Sometimes you'll get the folks that are like, oh, you're tired, but just like push through until it's done. I'm like, I literally cannot. Like
Mhm.
that's not an option for me.
Right. And it's not a good option.
Exactly, right. But I like from the outside, I also don't look sick.
Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
so
Here you are doing crazy crap on the floor, right? And they're like, what?
yeah, she's faking. But
Right.
so having people that actually can understand some of those things I've found very beneficial.
Right.
I think finding some sort of movement that works for you.
Uh-huh.
Not everyone's meant to do pole.
Right.
This is totally fine.
Hmm.
Uh, is there swimming? Is there cycling? Is there just a chair, aerobics class? Like
Right.
something to try to keep your body moving and active.
Hmm.
And I find that part of the reason I'm so adamant about it now in my 30s is because I'm only getting older,
Uh-huh.
right? And so if I have kind of the routine and the
Hmm.
habit of working out now,
Hmm.
it seems like it's a lot easier to kind of carry in through my life as I age,
Right.
rather than like, oh, I'm 45 and the doctor says I've got high blood pressure, I better start going to the gym,
Right. It's
It's a lot easier to kind of maintain, I feel
uh-huh.
like, than start later on. So,
Right.
whatever that looks like for you, starting some kind of movement.
Hmm.
And then also just take notes before your doctor's appointments. Be okay to ask questions.
Hmm.
Feel empowered to ask questions, because at the
Uh-huh.
end of the day, it is your body
Right.
and your quality of life. And doctors are amazing. They've got a
Hmm.
lot of education. They've got a lot of really great ways to help people out. But you are living what you're living,
Hmm.
and so just kind of being able um, to have those thoughts and say like, hey,
Hmm.
I know you said to try this medication, but I'm really not tolerating it. Like, what are our other options?
Hmm.
Or like, is there anything else that I can do on my end?
Right.
Take some responsibility, and that it's probably not going to be a sit on the couch and things are just going to
Magically fix
magically be
themselves.
okay. Like, you are going to have an active role
Right.
in your quality of life and your recovery and your
Mhm.
health. And just, yeah.
No, I like that. Again, it's easier to build a habit. Like you can build a habit whenever,
Mhm.
right? But it is easier to start to be like, okay, this happened. What do I do? versus again, when you are like, oh no, now I have to, now I'm going to change 45 years of who I was with this thing. So, and again, doctors are also operating under what they have, right? They're 15 minutes with the person running in and out. So the better prepared you are to come in and be like, hey, and it is your body, right? Like someone could try to pressure you what to do with it, but at the end, it's your body and it's your health. So I appreciate those thoughts on it. Goals for yourself for the future, like where I know you're like or are you just, I mean, again, I feel like you're doing so well, and like I don't know if you're like, what, I just want to do this crazy ass trip on the pole and be happy, like, or just again just happy and healthy cruising along, or finding, that you're like, I have no idea where this journey is going to take me.
I mean, I think all of those are valid answers.
Right.
I was actually on a phone call with one of my best friends last night for like 2 hours and laughing about how I'm a very like intrinsically motivated person. And so I'm constantly like, oh, this sounds good. And I love to like reach for more things. So that's why I'm getting this 200-hour yoga certification. But so yeah, actually be teaching some yoga classes, be great, continuing to progress in more beefy pole moves,
right.
As well as getting better at flow, because I'm gosh awful. Who knew that dancing in heels could be so hard?
Right.
And then, just continuing to be more consistent. I would like to be more consistent in my home like practice, and whether it's flexibility or whether it's breath work, or I would like to be a little bit more consistent with that.
Right.
Yeah, other than that, just whatever I can do to help keep myself healthy is kind of what I'm interested in.
So again, I appreciate all of your thoughts on the things, and your help and your advice, and kind of sharing on your journey. And again, I do feel like a little bit as healthcare practitioners, sometimes we have a little bit of an edge, but that's why we try to share what we've learned. And then again, I'm always saying, like, talk to your other healthcare practitioners, ask for help with things. Then that's sometimes, like, I feel like in therapy, we are kind of a little bit of like advocates a little bit for our patients. So it's us trying to help them find resources and help them figure out the things. So again, thank you for taking the time to just share your journey and to talk about the things. And I look forward to seeing, I actually look forward to you teaching yoga soon, but I look forward to seeing how your journey plays out.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. As always, whether we are listening to someone share their expertise in treating an area or just sharing their patient experience, we have also listed any of the resources or how to get hold of the practitioners on the resource page of the website for betterfittherapy.com. Always follow us on social medias, Instagrams, Facebooks for more information. Feel free to reach out or message if you would like to contact or you have additional questions in an area. And again, thank you for listening. We hope that you gained something from today's episode, and we'll see you next time.